Paul Teutul Jr. is a custom motorcycle designer who spent 10 years living his life in front of the camera as one of the stars of the hit Discovery Channel shows American Chopper and American Chopper Senior vs. Junior. Millions of viewers witness Paul Jr.'s creative genius in designing and building custom bikes each week. In his book, The Build, Paul shares behind-the-scenes stories from the show, his life growing up, and how his faith has kept him steady despite the rocky relationship with his father.
Well, Paul's with us now, and it's an honor to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I watched a couple of the episodes, and I thought you two were going to like kill each other. I mean,
we almost did a few times.
I mean, and you say all of that is real.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I think that dynamic really came from my early years growing up. It was just the volatile relationship me and my father had, and as we got into my teen years, you know, you have the natural, you know, friction between a father and son. And then I worked for him in the steel business for many years. And then we transitioned into building motorcycles. So for all intents and purposes, you know, being under my father's roof until we parted ways after years of building motorcycles together, you know, we were inseparable for about 30 years. And so, you know, that dynamic, it just was what it was. And I think a lot of our dynamic had to do with the way my father was brought up, and it goes generationally sometimes like that.
Oh, it definitely goes generationally. I think you learn how to parent from your parents, and that's the model that you want to follow. And then there's an emotional link to that model. And it's very hard to break it. It
is very hard to break it. I mean, even now I see myself like I feel like my father I feel like I move like, and there's a lot of good things about that too. You know, it's not always a negative thing. You know, you get the good and the bad, I think, and I think that's the balance. But I think for me as a father now, what I have to weed out is what's good and bad, and you know, how do I raise my son, and what kind of things could I do differently?
What was the changing point for you? Because it must have been difficult. There were. I mean, the relationship that we see on the show was real behind the scenes and very volatile. Yeah. What was that like for you?
You know what? It's an interesting thing. When you grow up in that environment, you don't realize that there's anything wrong with it. People on the outside, friends and family say, you know, it's not normal. Like that dynamic, that's a little crazy. And I just would always say, yeah, that's how we are. You know, this is how we are. So to understand the issue, you can't really when you're that close to it. So it really wasn't until me and my father parted ways at the end of 2008, after we had a fallout, that I was able to realize, wow, that was unhealthy. And again, it's not all my father, it's a dynamic, right? So it takes two to tango, so to speak. And that's, you know, but coming out of that, I started to realize, man, this was not really that healthy. But, you know, it's so amazing because it's the thing that made it so interesting. It's what people really enjoyed and wanted to see. And I don't think it was so much that they wanted to see us go at it, but I think people relate to that dynamic. Most people hide that stuff. For us, we put it out there. We were very vulnerable in showing, laughing, crying, you know, fighting, building beautiful motorcycles, you know, as a family. And I think about it historically, this whole world was built on family businesses, right? Trades and things of that nature. So we were just doing what's been done forever, only all of a sudden people were watching us all over the world.
Well, I think the glue to it was people wanted hope for their own circumstance.
Absolutely.
The magic to it was that you actually stuck together.
That's right.
You didn't let the conflict, you didn't let the dysfunction
drive us apart.
And the family.
Yeah.
And you stayed in there.
Yep. And I feel like that has transcended age, gender, culture, because Discovery has really afforded us a global audience. So it's interesting. We traveled all over the world, and the show has showed in every language and been everywhere. And I think it translates everywhere because family is everywhere, and a lot of families work together. And so, you know, at this stage in the game with the show coming back, my hope is for a true reconciliation between me and my father. He has his business, I have mine. It's been that way for a while. We have our separate brands and identities, and I think we should keep it that way. But what I would like to see is us start to come together. And we're just starting to film, and so I think that type of thing is what's happening now, and it's a slow process, but I feel like 2018 is going to be a year of reconciliation. I really believe that.
Were you afraid going into this? I mean, when you were pitched with, let's bring it back.
Original, coming back? No, I think I was ready.
Oh, really?
I think so. Yeah, because we did it for 10 years, and when we were done, we were done. I mean, it's 6 weeks to do a 1-hour episode because it's a process show because we're building things. And we traveled the world and did that for a decade. We were filming 11 months out of the year. And when I say 11 months, I mean sometimes 20-hour days and weekends. So it really took a lot out of us. So after 10 years, we were done, but it's been 5 years. And so I really feel like it's time. I think that it is time, like it is the right time this year. So,
but when you split, you say in retrospect it was healthy for you. It opened your eyes to some things. Well, at the point in time, what did you do with rejection? Did you feel that?
Oh, devastating. Yeah, when I say it was good I think ultimately it was really good for me. But at the time, my world was coming to an end because I had made the commitment to my father and to the company. So to be let go, to be fired, it wasn't something that I ever anticipated because I thought I would take over the company because that was, in spite of the difficulties, in spite of the dissension and the discord, I thought, man, I'm going to stay the course. So when it was time, I had so much investment in that company creatively. We had started it together. I had so much invested there, and then it was all gone. And your identity gets tied up in that quite often. So when I was able to separate myself from that, or when I forcefully was separated, I had to really look at the situation, not only the dynamic with my father, but how much of my identity was tied up in the business, you know? And so it was like I began a journey to find out who I am as a man, as a person, and then transitioning into marrying my wife, and starting to grow up.
How did faith play into that?
Oh, it was everything. It was everything always. I think I was able to. Well, adversity causes you to press in, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, that's what that's how
increases your prayer life.
That's right. It really does, and I think that's what happened for me. And I feel like, man, I got to grow up here, And so, in the absence of that environment, I had to look at myself, and so I had started working through that, and I think prayer life increased, being in the Word increased, and that started to really give me the idea of who I am. When you have celebrity, people tell you who you are, the accolades come, but you start to realize you're not who people say you are, you're not even who you think you are, you're who God says you are, at least in His Word, and that's the realization you start to come to when you press in, especially through adversity. I mean, that's the only way. Unfortunately, it would be great if we pressed in hard when everything was cruising along, but that's not usually how it works.
Sometimes when I talk to sons who've come out of dysfunctional backgrounds, and whether that dad wasn't around at all or there was, constant antagonism, I tell them that they may have to reparent themselves. Did you have to do that? Did you have to say, okay, there's a heavenly Father who is different?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I have a 3-year-old, so I'm in the process, right? So I'm still working through that. And as he's growing and the circumstances are changing, I'm having to look at myself more and say, man, am I doing this right? I feel like I'm repeating history here a little bit, but at least I have a picture of maybe what that is, so I can go ahead and try and not repeat the negative things that took place between me and my father. When I say that, tremendous amount of good things happened between me and my father. And again, he's passed on phenomenal traits and humor and all these great qualities, but the bad things were pretty bad, And again, like I said, my father, a lot of that comes from his upbringing, and that's all he knew to give to me in that sense. He didn't have this perspective that I feel like I have. He just didn't have that.
And that's a great way to look at it. He did the best he knew.
And I think I could look at it that way because now I'm a father. It does change your perspective because now I have the responsibility to my son. And so I feel like I look at him with much more forgiving eyes,
Well, definitely when I became a parent, I started to understand God better, and I started to understand my parents better. And you get a real appreciation of just how hard it is and how much you love them and you want the best for them.
Yeah.
It really changes things. Well, when's the new show?
So the end of February, I'm not sure exactly what date, will be our first episode airing. And then I think they're going on a 3-month break, and then we'll run 6 episodes at the end of May. It'll be on Discovery Channel, I believe Monday nights, 9, 10 o'clock. I don't think it's exactly nailed down yet, but people can just look out and see when it's
2 months.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. If you want to learn more, Paul's book is called The Build, Designing My Life of Choppers, Family, and Faith, and it's available wherever books are sold. And Paul, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks.
God bless you.